Hello. Today we're going to be taking a look at our Module 7 in our Teaching Foundation series. And today we're going to be taking a look at Chapter 6 on timing. And most of the material that we have here is from John Saphir's The Skillful Teacher book. So a lot of people say timing is everything, and we've had a lot of studies done in the educational world as to how time affects student engagement, student learning, and our teaching. And one of these studies says that the quality of our teaching is what changes time in the classroom. As teachers, we have the power to control the clock, even if we often feel the clock is controlling us. And I know from my experience as a classroom teacher, there are lots of things that take our time, whether they're fire drills or announcements. Sometimes it's management in the classroom. Maybe you have a student who is having some particular trouble. So there are lots of factors, but as we become more practiced as educators, we can certainly employ several different strategies and techniques to improve our timing in the classroom. So what I'd like you to do is to go ahead and pause this video and in Google Classroom, respond to the following question. What are 3 things that take away from the instructional time in your classroom? So the next thing I want to talk about here are time audits, and these can be very valuable as a teacher. A time audit is going to really take a look at your pacing, the different activities that are happening in your classroom, the transition, and it really delves deeply into looking at how much time you're actually spending on instruction and how much time students are spending engaged in that classroom. And we know from several studies that teachers who study their time use make significant changes and get better student learning. So it's something that we definitely have to be cognizant of. And just as I said before, many events steal our instructional time. Whether it's our classroom management techniques, maybe we have weaker or very slow transitions between activities. It can be chatter among students. So it's really important for us to take down some specific objective data about your instructional time. And that actually may help us to identify places that we can improve, that we can actually be more effective. And so definitely, one criterion for good teaching is a good use of student time. So what I would highly recommend that you do is to take some time and actually complete an audit in your classroom. And what you want to do is you want to look at the time that you're devoting to actual instruction, how much time is being taken up by non-instructional activities, so housekeeping, transitioning, gathering materials. A lot of times this can really help you identify those places where you may be able to double up. For example, and I've seen many of you in your classrooms doing this, where you have a bell ringer on the board and students are working on that while you are taking basic attendance and answering questions maybe from students who were absent the previous day. And of course, it's going to really help you look specifically at how much time are students engaged. You might be surprised at how much time is being taken in your classroom where actual learning and instruction is not taking place. And what distractions are there? Now, to do this, and in a normal school year, I would actually have you pick one of these 2 examples and actually try it out in your classroom. But it does take someone coming in to actually record during your classroom. So I know that can be really difficult at this time. So I'm not requiring that you do this. But if you do get the chance at some point in the next few months, take a look at these examples. One way is the first example, and I link this in your Google Classroom, is to just list by time. Have a colleague come in and list by time the activities that are happening throughout the classroom. The second way is a little bit more intensive, but it's actually using a roster of your students, and you have activities at the top, and your colleague is making tally marks as to where students are engaged. And that can really give you some valuable data. Like I said, it's a little bit more time intensive, a little bit tougher to look at, but it can give you some valuable insight as to where maybe you can pick up some time in your instruction. So time designations, a couple of different things here. First, high success time. This is the time that students are spending performing tasks with a high rate of success. And we know that high to average teachers provide more than twice as much academic learning time as in the average case, and more than 6 times as much in the low average case. So we know timing is integral to really great teaching. And then you have interactive instructional time. And that's when the student and the teacher are interacting with each other in the learning process. So, that's a lot of times where maybe you have had some direct instruction and now you are working with students, whether in a small group or individuals on tasks. And of course, this interactive time is going to require a lot of clear explanations, prompt feedback, knowledge of results, appropriate degree of guidance. So it's you moving around the room. It's you being cognizant of what students are doing, which students are in need, and so on. So some timing studies. What I'd like you to do is to, in a few minutes here, to pause the video. And I want you to go to Google Classroom and take a look at 2 pages from the book, The Skillful Teacher. And I've uploaded that as a PDF in Google Classroom. So you can either read it on your computer or if you would rather print it and highlight it. But after reading that, I would like you to describe 3 strategies that you could implement in your own classroom to increase time on task for students. So please go ahead and take a few minutes and do that. So coming back from your reading, some of the takeaways. We know that teachers who had lower rates of interaction with students had classes with significantly smaller gains, especially for those low-performing students. A lot of times those are our neediest students, and they're going to need more of that, that teacher-to-student interaction and really that relationship between the teacher and the students is really going to come forward. We also know that students who have a lower socioeconomic status, or SES students, they tend to have a loss of 11 minutes a day. So we're seeing more with those lower socioeconomic students. And that would amount to having to attend as much as 1.5 months during the summer to obtain the same education as a higher SES student. So it's important that in all classes, with all groups of students, that we are making sure appropriate time is being given to instruction, to collaboration and feedback. So how do we minimize that non-instructional time? We went to establish routines and procedures. We went to delegate jobs, reinforce efficiency. So, this all comes back to your classroom management. Have your instructional materials prepared ahead of time. Really know where you're going with things. Teach students themselves that efficiency factor, that when they're moving to a small group, that they are moving quickly, that they have their materials ready. Minimize discipline. A lot of times, the less time you're giving students to move around to groups and to transition between activities, that's really going to minimize a lot of your management disruptions. So all of this, of course, is related to pacing and rhythm. So in addition to that good classroom management that we were just talking about, we have these additional instructional tips for maximizing time. The opening and closing minutes of lessons are really the moments that are most naturally remembered. So make the most of that. That's why those bell ringers, those initial questions, having exit tickets, that's why that is so important. Bell-to-bell instruction. Don't waste time. Giving students a couple of minutes at the end of each day, that's going to really add up over the course of a week, a month, a semester. So make all of your activities meaningful. Make sure that students are engaged that entire class period, bell to bell. Pause every 8 to 10 minutes of direct instruction. This is important. Even as adults, I know I have a difficult time sitting and getting for a long period of time. So make sure you are giving periods of time where the students can maybe do a turn and talk. You're incorporating that sort of thing into your instruction. Chunk your material up so you naturally have these breaks. Allow time for thinking, whether it's writing or, like we said, that turn and talk. Have time built in for student reflection. And another important thing here is physical movement every 30 to 40 minutes. And this is especially important. We have longer class periods in many of our buildings, and we want to make sure that students have that opportunity for physical movement. So I'd like you to just take a few minutes here and take a look at the video and just kind of think about, how are we seeing this incorporation of movement to help improve pacing?
Every student, every classroom, every day. That's learning engagement. Hi, I'm Ryan. Did you know the tale about Goldilocks? How she liked things just right and moved around a lot when she did her best learning? We're all a little bit like Goldilocks. You too, teachers. You may not know it, but you will when we're done. Let's take a page from the folk tale Goldilocks and bring it into the 21st century. It's called learning engagement. FYI, here are 14 strategies that make sitting down to learn ancient history. Let's talk learning engagement, pacing and physical movement.
I'm Mark Campoli, and I teach math and science at Fawn Elementary School in 5th grade.
Mr. Campoli's 5th grade classroom is all a buzz. Kids here are moving as they need to and working at their own pace.
So it's really self-paced. We use student response systems. Sometimes we use something like Socrative, or we use something like an I Respond, and students will put in their answers, so we know how they're completing work, and we can keep up with how they're doing on those assignments.
Mr. Campoli plans sharing sessions. He plans for the lessons to move smoothly. During the lesson, he makes sure all the students have the opportunity to work at their own pace. He knows where each student is in their learning, and he's way interested in students getting up and moving during the lessons. That's learning engagement in action.
There's a lot of movement for the students, so they can work together in small groups. They can come and get assistance from one of the teachers, or they can work by themselves. But they're constantly moving from place to place, which keeps them a little bit more active. So that movement is a good way to keep them engaged in their lesson. If you do have these strategies incorporated into your lessons, you will see a large impact on student learning and engagement and student behavior.
That's right, all you bears and Goldilocks. Our favorite story time has always had a pop quiz. How do I engage the student in their learning every day and keep high energy and positive energy? How do I motivate students who may feel sluggish about participating? Make transitions to learning more smoothly. You answered just right. Our 14 learning engagement strategies. Did you answer at your own pace? I'm so proud of you. Time to reflect. Our strategies, pacing and physical movement. Get students up and moving during instruction time. Make sure to plan for pacing that aligns with the learning transitions. And keep the focus on the learners. It's what you adults say. Less sage on the stage and more expert guide on the side. That's important because we're the ones doing the learning. It's what the research says is the best way for us to learn. But you've heard that somewhere before. That's right. For me, a kid. Expert on the scene. Maya. Strategies 2 and 3. Pacing and physical movement. Every student, every classroom, every day. That's learning engagement.
So you can definitely see how important and how connected pacing and movement is with your timing and promoting that student engagement. So just take a few minutes here, pause the video, and answer in Google Classroom the question, how do you utilize currently, or how do you plan to utilize physical movement in your classroom? To help with pacing and improving your timing. So just to kind of wrap up here, a classroom's timing is one of the most significant factors in the type of education a student receives. You go into any classroom in the school, and you can definitely note differences in the pacing and the timing in those classrooms. So please take a look at some of these, take a look at a time audit. I think you will really find them valuable. Thanks for listening.